Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions in the comment box and you'll see me turn my head and I'll check from time to time. I want to welcome our sponsor, the Pearlstone Center. Pearlstone offers environmentally friendly full service hospitality. Their beautiful facilities and natural surroundings create the optimal setting for memorable events and group gatherings. Today's guest is author and grocery store historian Jeremy Diamond. Having grown up in the Mid-Atlantic grocery business, his family owned the 48-store Foodorama supermarkets. His book, Tastemakers, The Legacy of Jewish Entrepreneurs in the Mid-Atlantic Grocery Industry, gives you a trip down memory lane. And we are going to be talking about how the immigrants, corner stores, and push carts eventually emerged as the leading supermarket chains and distributors in the Mid-Atlantic. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Dara. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you. So other than this conversation about your book and the history of Mid-Atlantic grocery stores in Baltimore, what else is on your plate today?
I'm working on a second book. I can't say a whole lot about it, except it's a similar topic.
Okay.
And it's gonna be as good as the first one.
Well, obviously, it's a subject you're passionate about. Your book, Tastemakers. What was the impetus for writing the book?
So I wanted to save the story of my family and Foodorama, and I realized that there's a lot of other families out there that had or currently have supermarkets and started as a corner store, and so I wanted to save their stories too, and to preserve for the future generations and readers. And I thought it was important. It's a passion of mine.
Well, you take us on a journey in the mid-30s to the creation of self-service shopping, from your family coming over, the immigration story. People came from Poland, Russia, Jerusalem, Czechoslovakia, Ukraine, Germany. Your family, the Diamonds, what was their story about coming to the U.S.? In a quick, I know it's a whole long chapter, but if you can give us some insight.
Sure. So my grandparents survived the Holocaust with my grandfather's sister and brother-in-law, Schusters, and then later on my grandfather's brother Dave joined as well, and they all had most of their family were slaughtered in the Holocaust, and they came here with the clothes on their backs and $10 in their pocket, in search for a better life, and it's a new language and new everything, and the Diamonds and Schusters worked hard, and they grew from a corner grocery store into a self-service type concept, and then my grandfather and his brother-in-law and brother Ben Schuster and Dave Diamond opened Foodorama. It was a full-size supermarket in Baltimore, and grew from there. A lot of long days of working just to support the family, and also they had the mentality to survive, and they had that mentality even with 48 supermarkets. My grandfather always had that type of mentality. He can never switch it. Is what I saw. But
Well, I think, I being of a generation way before you, but I have a recollection in the 50s. What was shopping for food like before these stores came into play? So we talk about, I remember my mother going up to Garrison Boulevard and she'd go into the butcher shop and get something at the butcher shop. Then she'd go into the bakery and get something there. And before you had a supermarket where you could go to your shelves, people would go in and the merchant would pull things for them. Am I correct?
correct. You had a clerk behind the counter, and you would say, I want a can of beans or a bag of rice, and they would get it for you. That's how it was. Yeah, but back in the 30s, 40s, 50s
Right,
also. Yeah.
right. So Foodorama, Giant Food, start doing big, big box grocery stores, self-service, meaning that you, as the consumer, could go to the shelf and you could pick up. Maybe you didn't want those beans. You could pick it up, you could touch it and be part of it. Um, I mentioned Giant Food because they were really innovators, and I'm sure there were some that went with the Diamond family. But I remember that Giant seemed to be sort of the innovator of what was new and looking to the future of what was going on. Um, I think they did. I mean, people listening to this, don't think about this, but somebody came up with the automatic doors when you go into the
Correct.
supermarket. Um, they were, I remember when it was such hoopla when the Giant Food and Milford Mill and Liberty Road opened because it was the first Baltimore Giant Food. And it was so cutting edge. Um, I'm just they were the ones who really started, though you had it with yours too. They integrated more into the store. Uh, it was, they in-house bakery, in-house butcher, um, uh, their own construction company. They kept everything under one. What memories do you have from Foodorama and things that they innovated?
So, Giant had scanners first in the Baltimore, DC area.
You mean the UPC code?
Correct. Yeah. Instead of punching in the price, you just run it across a scanner. That was huge, and Giant was one of the first. Foodorama excelled on the warehouse type of store in the late 70s. The warehouse type store concept is fewer product, no frills, and sell volume, extreme volume at low prices. And Foodorama, that was their thing, as one of their banners, as well as catering to the certain areas of Baltimore, of Maryland, and then later on DC, but catering to the area versus a huge chain doesn't do that. They go across the board. All their stores are usually the same, and the same kind of product, the same kind of marketing mix, and so that's where Foodorama excelled, is in each neighborhood, kind of catering the product mix.
Right.
to
So
those areas.
if it was an Hispanic neighborhood, maybe so the products were geared to that. And
Correct.
when Foodorama started, it was more inner city Baltimore, and then
Yes.
expanded out. Um, Before I forget, because I tend to get carried away with conversations, I want to bring in a quick 15-second commercial for Pearl Stone, and Jen will pop that in momentarily.
Pearlstone Conference and Retreat Center offers environmentally friendly, full-service, farm-to-table hospitality. Our beautiful facilities and natural surroundings make the optimal setting for memorable events and group gatherings. PearlstoneCenter.org.
And we're back. I want to show everybody the book. This is Tastemakers. It's a big book, so I can't quite, maybe if I go back. But if you go to the comment section, there are links where you can get this. And the book is at here in Baltimore and also on Amazon.com. It's at the Ivy Bookstore here in Baltimore. And I must tell you, everybody, it was a trip down memory lane because I have background in so much of this. I want to get back to Giant. I thought what was interesting. One of the people at Giant was Jack Lehrman. He was the son of the founder. And Giant, and I guess along with Foodorama, it wasn't just going into a shopping center, that Jan Lehrman would take a helicopter and he would count rooftops in a neighborhood to see if it was worthwhile to put a Giant store in there. I thought that was quite fascinating. Aren't you in real estate in some form right now?
Correct, I am. Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
The commercial real estate, and I flip houses, and yeah, it keeps me out of trouble. That's what I usually say. So.
Well, that's good, I guess. Yeah, but a little trouble doesn't hurt, or maybe fun. Let's see. I'm just checking my notes. I have so many. Okay, Giant did open display cases. In the book, you covered many of the food stores. Like I said, it was a trip down memory lane. Foodorama, Giant, Shoppers Food Warehouse, Weiss Markets, Value Food, Klein's, Eddie's in Roland Park, Cash and Carry, Brown Supermarket, Shapiro's, 7 Mile Market, Schreiber Brothers, Easy Market, Food Fair, Penn Fruit. These were all stores that came from immigrants who had that corner store, who had the business. Penn Fruit obviously started off as a fruit company. There was one that was eggs. Who did eggs? Savile? No, it wasn't Savile.
It was
Smelkinson.
Smelkinson, correct.
Smelkinson was distributors. And there's so many layers to the grocery business for people to understand. Yes, we have a grocery store. You have distributors who warehouse the products and ship it out to the grocery stores. You have a food broker. And do you want to explain to the people what a food broker is?
The food broker basically is a matchmaker and matches up the manufacturer with the retailer. In a simple sense, that's their job.
Right. We had discussed before. You didn't know this, but I worked for Jameson Food Brokerage back in the 70s. I was still in diapers, but I worked there anyhow. And what a food broker did for a manufacturer, when I worked at Jameson, they had Union Carbide, they had Sara Lee, okay, where are my notes? Quaker Oats, Mars Candies, things of that nature. For Quaker Oats to set up a whole sales force and make new connections with buyers cost them a lot of money. So they go to a broker who now has the people to go in store and restock the shelves or set new stores up and do promotions. They have salesmen who go to the buyers who have a relationship. So for 10% or 15% of what the sale is, that's what the broker worked on. But it was built on the relationships that they had. And when I worked for Jameson, they were a little bit different. I did customer service, but I handled all the products, and believe me, there were many, but just with the giant buyers. My thing is I had a joke every day, so whoever the buyer was, I told them a joke, they were happy, and we moved forward. So everybody, that's food brokers, and there was Kluge Finkelstein. Who else?
RMI.
Okay.
They were pretty big.
Right. And what I started to do when I read the book, and you're not going to be able to see this, I'm going to bring it up. I start writing the dates and when things started and the overlap. And one begat another, another. It was Food Fair, Pantry Pride. And let's see what I have down here. Then there was Metro. Metro begot Basics. Basics begot Value Food. Value Food became Shoppers. And these are all the different families that overlapped or bought the other ones out. And it's quite a fascinating story. But, I was trying to do the timeline, and it just got crazy. Crazy. Because these were all, what we're talking about was the Jewish immigrants were really quite responsible for what we saw in supermarkets in the area, other than an A&P or an Acme. But we had a kosher store, Shapiro's, which had, Maryland had the blue laws, everybody, where you couldn't be open on Sunday, but because they worked with the Jewish clientele who kept kosher, they were able to bypass this. I'm just finding all this history that you wrote in this book quite fascinating. I'm not going to give all of it away. They need to buy the book. So we have all these innovations that make life simpler. COVID comes, and now you can get delivered food. You can order online. Life is simple, but things change. And and I saw it on your site, but I wanted to bring it up. A university study from the United Kingdom recommends that grocers establish a slow checkout lane to improve the shopping experience for the elderly. And they say too many deals tied to buy one, get one, or minimum purchase requirements favor families. I'm in agreement. Who is it currently? It's just instituting that in the U.S. The slower, so the seniors have people to talk to and have a. Do you remember who that is?
So no, I don't.
I think it's Dutch Market, maybe Dutch. I think, yeah. How do you feel about that? I mean, you grew up in the grocery business, and your father and grandfather, they were people who went out and met the people and talked with them. And now it's like come in, go out. There's no connection with people.
Yeah. In the old days, I call it. My grandfather and my uncle Dave, Uncle Ben Schuster, they would walk the stores, see the customers. I heard a lot of stories about Izzy Cohen from Giant Food. He would walk the stores every day. It's a different feel now. You don't get that family-owned feel that you got back then. Now everything's pretty much owned by large corporations. You still have a few family-owned stores, but it's a lot fewer than it was
Right.
in the 70s, 80s, and part of the 90s.
Well, we do here in Baltimore have Eddie's at Roland Park.
Yes.
And that was a spinoff from the Eddie's stores that started. But Eddie's at Roland Park has that store and the one on North Charles Street. And they're famous for, they did a lot for prepared food. This is something they were doing a long time ago that the stores weren't, that you could go in, get some food to take home and serve that. But the Eddie's store started off as a franchise.
Right.
And we talked slightly. My uncle, may he rest, I have many of them, Herman Kabik bought the first franchise, and the Eddie's that was down on St. Paul Street was owned by my cousin Jerry Gordon.
Wow.
So a lot of connections. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of memories in this book for me, but I think it's some insight as to how supermarkets and big box stores came about. Giant, I think, is Ahold, is the company.
Correct. Yeah.
Ahold.
Yeah.
Ahold. Ahold. It's not the best name, but
No, it's not.
and it's HOLD. So, I mean, the concept of what grocery shopping and that personal experience, again, like my mother going to the butcher store, or going to the bakery, or having a personal relationship. And now coming sort of full cycle, we're missing that we're missing that connection in the stores, at least the seniors. I understand that. Being a widow, living alone, my big treats, especially during COVID, is going to the supermarkets, going to the food stores. Do I like Lidl? Yes. Do I like Aldi? Yes. Do I like, there's certain stores I go. I watch all the sales. My friends call me up and say, where should I go for this today? Which one is your favorite out of these new stores?
Aldi, by far, I think, is the best.
Go ahead.
They first of all expanded to thousands of stores in the U.S. and rightfully so. Most of their products are private label, and the pricing is just like, it's basically it's half of what you call a normal supermarket.
Right.
You just can't beat it as far as pricing. It's no frills, and get in and get out. I think It's great.
I was just there yesterday, and the produce, cost effective. I don't like to say the word cheap. I like to say cost effective. But I go there. Sometimes I hit Lidl. I don't know how to pronounce that. That's another Lidl, European company that is here, and ShopRite. That's where I want to go. I find the other stores. I look at the price of eggs. It is now $3.59 a dozen, and that's at Aldi. So if you
and that's cheap. If you go to Giant, I think you're paying $5 or $6 a dozen. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you. And so let's talk about this one last time. Maybe there'll be a volume 2. Jeremy's not letting on to what he's writing, but the book is available on Amazon.com, or if you're in Baltimore, the Ivy. But if you want to learn more about the history of what supermarkets are, from the history of the push carts and the corner stores that the immigrants did, I found this quite fascinating. And so we recommend that. We always ask our guests a couple questions at the end of the show. And I don't know if you cook at home. Do you ever cook?
It's rare. It's rare. You know, I always tell folks I know my grocery stores, but as far as my palate, it's not of such a sophisticated palate.
It
So
doesn't have to be sophisticated. I will not ask you what your epic culinary fail is because I don't think you cook.
right.
All right. If you woke up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
It's a good question. Honestly, I'm thankful for the gifts and the talents that God gave me, and I don't really, I don't need any other talents to be honest.
Okay. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would that be?
It'll be to listen closely to the older folks, to the older generation. They have a lot of experience and a lot to say, and I wish my 18-year-old self would have listened, would have taken notes, would have really listened to those stories. Yeah.
Well, I think you did them great honor by writing the book. I think
Thank you.
yes. And what question didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Um,
Did I cover all the bases?
yeah. Yeah, no, we covered. I think we covered everything. Yeah, just to reiterate, most of the founders of all these companies, aside from being either Holocaust survivors, or they experienced, hard times, in this country in the 1920s and 30s, and going door to door. So even though they weren't survivors of the Holocaust, they still, life in general was hard, and to grow their businesses into these dominant companies that I featured, it's quite a thing. I have a lot of respect for them.
Well, it wasn't easy, and it was 24/7.
Yeah,
They
correct.
that's it. You got to work hard.
Yeah.
You're building things up. I want to thank you so much, Jeremy, for finding the time to be on the show.
Thank you for having
Everybody,
me.
look, it's a great joy. You opened my eyes through your book to a lot of history and a fun trip down memory lane and becoming aware of what going to buy food was in the 30s versus what it is today and the growth of self-service. So everybody, Jeremy Diamond, his book, Tastemakers, The Legacy of Jewish Entrepreneurs in the Mid-Atlantic Grocery Industry. It's an easy read, and it's a great trip down memory lane. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm going to do some announcements for next week, and thank you again.
Great. Thank you.
Next week's guest will be Vasudha Viswanath, author of the just released The Vegetarian Reset, 75 low-carb plant-forward recipes from around the world. And just a reminder, the December-January JMOR issue is out on the stands throughout the city. I'm reaching for it now if you didn't catch it before. It is the January-February issue called Aging Gratefully. I wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning article in there called on Aging Gratefully. So we'll be posting it on the website, jmoreliving.com, probably next week. And if you need to reach me, you can reach me at my email, food@jmoreliving.com, or Instagram @Dara Cooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on JMOR's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. As I like to round out the show, may your plates always remain full, and I will see you next Thursday. Have a good week.